an entire generation of queer people died during the AIDS crisis. And so for so many of us, we've had no elders. We don't know a lot of our queer history because it hasn't really been passed down to us.
You got plenty of like queer folks in their 40s and 50s and whatnot, but there's not as many like hunched over with a cane, like aged folks to go up to and be like, let me tell you about 72.
But first, a word from our sponsors.
Are you ready for the Unleashed tour, where shamelessness, sexiness, and laughter collide in a hilarious orgy of fun, discovery, and sex edutainment? Embark on a captivating nationwide journey with the Shameless Sex podcast and an electrifying ensemble of sex educators and sex-positive entertainers as they bring you an unforgettably titillating live experience. Be a part of mesmerizing, entertaining, boundary-pushing acts, Shameless Sex style. Ever heard of the Slurpee stick shift? Want to learn how to bury your face in her? How about some dirty talk improv or brat taming 101?
Get ready for nonstop laughter as our charismatic hosts and entertainers weave humor into the fabric of this liberating celebration of sexual diversity and freedom. Engage in interactive segments, Q&A sessions, and a chance to connect with like-minded individuals in an inclusive and empowering environment. Listen up, Portland, Chicago, Seattle, we're coming to you. For more information and to get your tickets right now, go to shamelesssex.com and be part of a night that will be fun, educational, sexy, hilarious, and shamelessly unforgettable. Seats are filling up fast, so don't miss out on the most unforgettable show of the year.
Welcome to the Man-Whore Podcast.
Shout out to everyone at Pride, who everyone else at Pride says that they are not allowed at Pride. This is Billy Procida, and you're listening to the Man-Whore Podcast. My gosh, it is like watching LGBTQ Mean Girls. Got all your different factions fighting over the lunchroom. And then meanwhile, these people over here are trying to defund the entire lunchroom. What does my opinion matter? It doesn't. You know whose opinion matters, maybe on the subject, is my guest this week, Jordan Gonsalves. He's the host of the Unshaming podcast and the brand new But We Loved podcast over on iHeartRadio. iHeart app, iHeart Media, the Heart Symbol app. His new podcast is over there, But We Loved, where he talks with queer elders. We had a very insightful conversation about knowing your roots, knowing your history, and I'm going to share that with you in just a little bit. But first, a reminder that the Naked Comedy shows, they are back at the Hacienda in Bushwick this Friday. This Friday, we have 8 and 10 p.m. shows. Tickets still available, surprisingly. That's not always the case by Wednesday. Ticket link at the top of the schnotes or at manwhorepod.com. Use the promo code SHWEDY. I'm not going to spell it for you, but if you can figure out how to spell Shweddy, you get $5 off your tickets. Shweddy, Shweddy, Shweddy. Okay, so it's my birthday on Wednesday. It's my birthday. And I spend my birthday morning traveling to Midtown Manhattan to go to therapy. We go to therapy, people, 4 times a week, but we go to therapy. Yes, I know 4 times seems excessive. One of them is a group therapy I've been going to once a week for many, many years. And then the other one is psychoanalysis that I get for free from a training institute. And in order to get it for free, I have to commit to 2 or 3 times a week. So I can either have just my group therapy or I can get therapy 4 times a week for basically no cost. I am a professional poor person. Please join the Patreon. So yes, I do. Because I know that not going to therapy is a red flag, but I think going to therapy 4 times a week is also a red flag. 1 or 2, I think, is an acceptable amount per week. And that's how I spent my birthday morning. And then, so it then turned out that my dad was in town. He says, hey, do you want to meet me? I'm finishing lunch with an old friend of mine. We're up at Pershing Square. I go up there and I try to walk in. I'm wearing a tank top and I've got a backpack on. And I go walk past the podium and I say, oh, I'm meeting somebody. And I get stopped by this angry, older Eastern European lady. She says, I can't come in. Not dressed like that. I say, what? She's like, no tank tops allowed. I think that's strange. I saw no dress code listed. And so I tell my dad I have to wait at the podium in the front. I look too poor to be in there, so I'll be waiting over here on my birthday. Now, I do have a little bit of disdain for dress codes. They flashed me back to boarding school. So I kind of like, while I'm waiting, I go up to the hostess lady and I kind of lean in and ask, hey, I just want to understand. What exactly is the dress code rule? Is it no tank tops, or is it just maybe no shoulders? Is it no shoulders? And the lady says, yes. And I point behind her. I say, well, it's that lady over there. At that table, she's wearing a bare shoulder dress. So she's like, no, it's not no shoulders. It's no tank top. So I point to our right, and I point to a different woman, enjoying her lunch. It's not even her birthday. She's enjoying her lunch. Totally normal, not birthday lunch. And she's got the shoulders out in what's like basically a tank top. And then a third woman walks right by the two of us wearing a tank top. And I say, but tank top, but she's wearing a tank top. And this is where she fucks up. She says, oh, no. She's allowed to wear a tank top. The men are not allowed to wear tank tops. Men can't wear tank tops. And that's where she fucked up. At least with me. Billy Procida Jr., known pain in the ass. I divert from this story just to tell you a different story real quick, and then we'll come back and finish this one. In 2010, the New York Jets, loves of my life, we had a brand new stadium, MetLife Stadium, built. We had a brand new head coach, Rex Ryan, who turned out to have an unveiled foot fetish. That was fun. And a brand new starting quarterback that we drafted in Mr. Mark Sanchez. It was a time of hope. It's like Obama just got elected for the first time. We're just feeling very hopeful. And we are playing the New England Patriots. I had a ticket, and we had not beaten the Patriots in like 5 years. It was something like 9 games in a row or something we've lost. I've got my ticket, and I checked, and it says I can have a backpack. And it says on the back of the ticket that the security has the right to search my bag if they choose to. So I take my backpack with my homework, and I ride the brand new NJ Transit shuffle train that they built for this new stadium. And I got my backpack, and I'm doing homework in the train because I'm a good student. And I get to MetLife, and I go to check in at the gate, and he says, oh, you can't have your backpack. I show my ticket. I'm like, oh no, I see. It says you'll search my backpack. He's like, I'm not searching your backpack. And I noticed that they're searching a lot of the chicks' bags, from purses to bigger totes and whatnot. I say, well, you can just search my bag. It's just homework. He says, yeah, I'm not searching, but go to this gate. So I go to that gate. And again, there's no signage that says you can't bring a backpack. There's no rule anywhere listed that says can't bring a backpack. It says we will search your backpack. So I go to this other gate that I'm sent to, and he says the same thing. Says, I'm not searching your backpack. I point to the women. He's like, you're searching their bags. He says, go fuck yourself. And so I go to a third gate, and I show him the ticket. I show him my bag, and I show him the ladies that they're searching. I say, can you just please search my backpack so I can go, experience joy potentially? And the guy's like, I'm not searching your bag. I say, but what about all these women's bags? He's like, well, women have like women things that they need to have, they need to bring like, tampons and birth control and stuff. And so, they need to have a bag. And I saw a woman bring like a massive beach bag, like the type of bag you could stack like baby triplets in them. You could take infants in this beach bag, and that was being checked. There were no babies in the bag, but it was that size. And I say, what about, and then he's like, well, they got to bring their purses. And I said, so if I brought a purse, you would search my purse? And he says, oh, men don't wear purses. I said, dude, I'm living in the West Village right now. I see a lot of men wearing purses. And this is where he fucked up, because you can't have a different rule. He doesn't let me in. I go into the parking lot, and I call every local paper. 2 days later, I am on the front page of the sports section of the Bergen Record, which is like the huge New Jersey paper of note. MetLife Stadium security had to like make a comment. The New York Jets had to make a comment. And you know what happened at the end of the season? They changed the fucking policy. So if you've ever been to a MetLife game or event, and they say you can only bring in a transparent bag, and that they might search that bag, but it has to be a transparent bag. That's the Billy Procida rule. That is because of me. He could have just searched my backpack, and now we all have to buy these weird, expensive, transparent bags. That's because of me. And so with this lady at Pershing Square, so she says like, oh no, that's the boys' dress code. And I'm like, I don't think that's allowed. I am Billy Procida, crusader for justice when something inconveniences me. With only the quickest rudimentary search, I find that in 2015, New York City explicitly outlawed gendered dress codes for restaurants for guests and employees. You can have a dress code, but you can't have it be a different dress code for the boys versus the ladies. She goes, that's just the owner's policy. And I know who this owner is because I am told that the owner, Buzzy O'Keefe, held me in his arms when I was an infant. He's a very old school, old man. But she insists this is the owner's policy and that's just what it is. And I continue to stand there on my birthday. It was my birthday. It was my birthday. I didn't ask for the manager, but she did go to the manager and it's like leaning in and like pointing at me. And so the manager, this guy comes over and he says, hi, can I help you? I said, yes. Did you know that in 2015, New York City outlawed gendered dress codes at restaurants for guests and employees? And he said, no, I did not know that. I said, well, great. Well, as you can see, tank top lady, I'm a tank top boy. I'd like to go in. It's my birthday. I just want to say hi to my dad. And the guy says, no, it's the owner's policy, no tank tops. I say, yeah, but it's against the law. He's like, yeah, nah. I did not face an amazingly great hardship. I was denied entry based on being a boy wearing a tank top. And you can't, I know it's like, oh, but like, who cares? I go like, you know what? If they're doing it to me, you don't think they're doing that to some trans, non-binary person and telling somebody, I just don't think you're wearing the right dress code for your sex. You really don't think they're saying nothing like that to no one like that? So they may or may not have started a fucking problem. I got an entire stadium to change its bag policy. And they didn't even really have to. By the way, there's no dress code even on their website. Like, I can't find anything. It's just like, it's just fabricated out of nowhere, but you can't have a different rule for the boys versus the girls. If any of you are rolling your eyes, okay, remember that Ruth Bader Ginsburg, almost like every single case that she did at all for like sex-based equality, almost all the cases were utilizing a dude who is being discriminated against to prove the point. And now I'm curious how many other fancy restaurants still have gender dress codes. I have a list. We might go find out. Is that something? Or were we just annoyed by that? You know, one person who can tell me is Daniel Wilson, the recipient of this week's Fan Whore Appreciation Moment. Thank you, Daniel, for supporting the Man Whore Podcast on Patreon. I hope you're enjoying those 300 plus bonus episodes and all the behind the scenes goodies. Did you know there are ad-free episodes of the Man Whore Podcast available on Patreon? Yeah, every week you can get this episode without all those annoying commercials. Give me your $3. Did I tell you it was my birthday last week? It was my birthday. I would like your $3 for my birthday, please, and thank you. You can do that over at patreon.com/manwhorepodcast. That's Patreon, patreon.com/manwhorepodcast. Be like Daniel. Have you joined the Champagne Room yet? Our super free, super sex positive, super friendly Discord server. We got together to watch Jen Harris's short film about showering with all of her dates. We ended up, there was a lively discussion afterwards. We did 15 minutes on washcloths. I feel like I was attacked for not having the correct washcloth regimen. But I learned about African neck claws, I think is what that is. And my loofah has been temporarily approved. I like to think that a lot of washcloth-based, personal hygiene-based friendships were formed at this watch party. So I do hope y'all will join us in the Champagne Room, in the Discord server, make some new friends. It's totally free. Link to the Champagne Room in the schnotes, or you can visit manwhorepod.com. All the linkies, all the thingies, they are over at manwhorepod.com, everybody. Except for one thing. One thing is not at manwhorepod.com. This week's guest, Jordan Gonsalves, his new podcast, But We Loved from iHeartMedia is an examination of queer elders and queer history through one-on-one conversations. And you can hear me chat with him on the pod right now. Enjoy ad-free episodes at patreon.com/manwhorepodcast.
Because my whole life, people have kind of always looked at me and seen my last name and been like, what? Because I am Indian. My parents are from India. They're immigrants from India. But I grew up in Texas. So when people see my last name, I think they think that it's Latin or that I'm Mexican, because it kind of sounds like Gonsalves. Somewhere, in the maybe 1700s or earlier than that, the Portuguese actually came and colonized a part of India.
Okay.
And they baptized all of the Indians Catholic. And so my family's been super Catholic for like centuries.
Oh, yeah. Where'd the interest in queer history come from?
Well, basically, it's kind of a long story, but I guess we have a long time.
Yeah.
Well, I actually wasn't super interested in queer history for a while. I came out to my family when I was 21 years old. And like I mentioned, I grew up super religious Catholic. Like, I'd go to church multiple times a week. And I grew up in the South, and my parents are from a pretty conservative country.
Yeah.
So I spent a lot of my life in the closet and really ashamed of myself. And when I eventually came out, I was 21 years old, and I had gotten this job in tech working. So they asked me to move to San Francisco. That's where all the annoying tech companies are.
Yeah.
And I remember I made a pretty good group of gay friends while I was out there.
In San Francisco?
Believe it or not, I just had to walk outside of my apartment, and there they all were. But basically, while I was there, I remember I had this opportunity to lead like a panel for my company at that time. They were having like a pride event, and the panel was for queer elders. And I was like, okay, I'm down for this. This seems exciting. So I chatted with them and stuff. And after the panel, one of them and I connected. And I remember he was probably like almost 60 years old. And we had a lot of parallels in our life. When he was my age, he had moved to San Francisco, and was sort of living his life and all of that. And I was having a blast at that age. I was probably 22. And I remember he sort of looked at me at one point, and his face started getting sort of sad all of a sudden. And I stopped myself and I was like, "Are you okay?" And he looked back at me and he said, "I'm jealous of you." Because I had told him, I'm having the time of my life. I'm like 22 years old and I'm having a blast, and I'm like having my coming of age that I never had when I was in high school, and all that. So I said, why would you say that? And he said, well, when I was your age, I was living in a time where I was so scared of getting AIDS. Right. And all my friends died of AIDS, and I was scared of getting AIDS and dying. And you are living the life that I thought I was going to live when I moved here. Mm-hmm. And I think in that moment, I realized that I didn't actually know that much about the history that came before me. Mm-hmm. And that was really the catalyst for inspiring me to learn more about where my people come from, and how I think as a journalist, the question you always ask yourself is, how did we get here? And I realized that I didn't know that answer for myself as how did I get here?
Well, also, it's like you went to school in Texas.
Yeah.
I can't imagine. Like Stonewall was covered at some point in some class.
Really?
I grew up in North Jersey.
Wow, I'm
Well,
still shocked by that.
Like the Stonewall as the riot was like probably a paragraph in one history book
Yeah.
in middle school or high school. But the AIDS epidemic, that was, I mean, we're not that far away in age. Like that was, feel like we got like, it was like AIDS, post-AIDS panic, but it was AIDS fear. It was like the new generation we got instilled with STD panic. I mean, I like literally, I have a woman that's visiting me for like a week from out of town, and like leading up to her getting here, all of a sudden I had this little bump on my hand. I was like, do I have fucking hand syphilis? Like I don't because I think the Gen Zers now, they have a little bit less panic about that because they're like, whoa, HIV, like, well, there's the PrEP, and now the doxy's out, and you just take a pill even if you do get. So I think they're not as scared. I think they're less scared about it. But I remember like it was, don't get this, you will die.
Oh, me too.
Because even when we were kids, they didn't have like all the medication cocktails.
No, not at all. No, not at all. I think when I was growing up, I remember, actually, it's funny because I grew up in a very conservative environment. And
what part of Texas?
I grew up in Houston. And Houston is actually a really dope city. It's amazing, and it has a ton of really just great culture and art, and it's such a bustling, amazing city.
You grew up in Houston and you have this NPR voice. Like there's not a hint of Texas going on, but like in Houston.
Well, let me tell you, I moved to New York when I was 17 years old for college, and the first time I let out a y'all, I feel like I got crucified by everyone. And
I also say y'all. It's a great contraction. And everyone around here will give me shit. And I go like, well, fuck you. Well, you got the time to say you all? I got things to do.
No, it really is. But yeah, when I grew up in Houston, I went to high school in the city, but I sort of had my adolescence in a suburb of Houston that was very conservative. And I didn't realize how conservative it was because at the time, YouTube and social media, that was really just being born.
Yeah.
And at that point, it was more so about kind of finding or connecting with people within your community, not so much like finding people outside of, who you know now and connecting with people that you don't know.
Right. It was all about finding people you went to high school with or grade school with. It was about
and
finding other
in,
people at your college.
Exactly.
It wasn't about, like, it was weird to friend people you didn't know. Like the idea
or
of
follow people you don't, unless they're celebrities or something.
Right.
Yeah.
That was weird. And then like, yeah. Sorry, continue.
No, it's really interesting. We have an episode on my show about coming out on YouTube. And it blows my mind. I was actually looking at some of the statistics for this in my reporting for that episode. And YouTube, I'd gotten in contact with the YouTube team. They told me 4 out of the 10 countries that watch coming out videos the most are the Philippines, Indonesia, Russia, and India. It's the homophobia in these countries are pretty intense, and the fact that we're seeing, they're so there's such an appetite for this kind of content. It really is powerful. Going back to what you said earlier about sort of growing up being fearful of AIDS and fearful of HIV. I had actually grown up in such a conservative environment. I remember my health class in the 7th grade. This was the first time that we had learned about HIV and had learned about sex and STDs and all of that. And I have a memory of my health teacher telling me that if you were gay, you would get AIDS and you would die. And that was one of the fears that I took with me really up until my adulthood. Not just the fear of getting HIV, but the fear of being gay.
Yeah, because gay equals death.
Exactly. And so, part of making this show has been so healing for me personally, because while yes, I am a journalist and I try to kind of keep that journalism hat on, I think in a really beautiful way, the show tells a lot of love stories. And one of the episodes on the show, or a couple of the episodes, are about the love stories that happened during the AIDS epidemic, which are so profound and so amazing. If you can really just put yourself momentarily in the shoes of these young men who were 21, 25, 28 years old, and either they or their partner suddenly was told, you will die. You will die. There were some drugs that kind of came out in the late 80s that were sort of helpful, but then ended up being a little bit more problematic later on. But that's a lot, for a young person. So yeah, it was a very intense environment where I grew up.
Well, it's a good time to say I'm chatting right now with podcaster, journalist Jordan Gonsalves, who has a new podcast out called But We Loved. Which is that Edgar Allan Poe reference, or?
A lot of people have asked me that.
Well, I did Google But We Loved, and I'm sure the SEO is going to improve as the show, because it's fresh show, new show. But the first results are all Edgar Allan Poe. So I was like, oh, maybe it's like an allusion to that.
But We Loved podcasts. The SEO is much better.
Well, yes, of course.
No, it's not. It's not a reference to that. Okay. But it is about sort of the journey to reclaiming a lot of this tragic history. I think when people think of gay history, it is pretty fucking sad. It's a lot of tragedy. It's a lot of sadness. But as I began to sort of excavate the history and really talk to people that lived it, I realized just how much amazing courage and perseverance and love there really was throughout all of this history. And so that's really what the title is about. It's about, in spite of all of this sort of tragedy and loss and sadness, there are all of these amazing stories of courage and perseverance and love.
Yeah. As adults, I think when we find out what we weren't getting told as a kid, whether it's about, I remember writing an email to my headmistress at my boarding school, my freshman year of college, being like, you didn't teach us about we didn't have sex ed. So I was like, you didn't teach me about all these STDs? Like, what? Right? So
you wrote an email to your headmistress? Oh, yeah. Wow. How old were you?
18.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I didn't become sexually active until I was 18.
What was her response to that?
I don't think I ever got a response. If I did, it was probably something really measured and thank you for the feedback. But Laura Gold, she's pretty chill.
No, that would be an iconic email to receive as headmistress.
Yeah, I don't think I yelled at her. My ability to conduct my tone over email has had to improve over the years. But it was just basically hey, we didn't have sex ed. I went there 4 years. How did I not know about this stuff? I knew that I knew about the big five or so. But that's from seventh grade health class, and you didn't tell me about I didn't know about contraction rates. I didn't know about efficiencies of condoms. I didn't know that there was a way to misuse a condom. I thought if it's on, then you did your job, and we didn't have any of that. All I learned was every year we'd have a dorm meeting in the guys' dorm, and Pam Birchie, she would explain the statutory rape laws of Connecticut.
Wow,
that's all I learned, and I learned that a toe counts.
Well, I'll tell you. Just how conservative my upbringing was in my Texas public school education. I had a health teacher this is the same health class that had told me, if you get AIDS, you'll die. If you're gay, you'll die, pretty much. We had gotten to the chapter around sex, and our sex education was abstinence. And I remember all of us. He had printed out these sort of agreements, and all of us had signed these agreements. We were, I guess, how old are you in the seventh grade? 13 or 12?
Yeah.
And the agreement had said, I promise I will not have sex until I'm married. And so this was a public school funded by, tax dollars that everyone in the state pays. And those were, that was what we signed. And I remember there was one kid who didn't sign it in the whole class. And everyone made fun of him because it was kind of humiliating to be like the one kid that probably looking back had somewhat of a voice of his own to be like, this kind of sounds a little crazy.
Do you know where that kid is now? Like,
no, I don't. I for what it's worth, fortunately or unfortunately, I don't keep too in touch with the kids from my middle school, but yeah, I remember that was a pretty crazy time.
Yeah. When you reach adulthood and you find out there were things they weren't telling you about, that, you know, there was queer history and that there was this epidemic. Because again, it's like you just got gay equals AIDS equals death, but not any of all the in between, all the equal signs. Did you have any feelings when you first realized that there was stuff you now know you don't know?
I mean, it was pretty shocking, honestly. It's funny because you said that there was like at least a paragraph or something about Stonewall.
Yeah.
I had nothing. I really had nothing. And I grew up really believing that I was the only kind of person that I was. Like, I was the only gay person that I knew.
Well, gay, Catholic, Indian dude in Houston, like maybe. No?
Suburb of Houston.
Suburbs
Yeah,
of Houston.
Conservative suburb of Houston. And even when I went to high school in Houston, there were gay kids in my school, but I went to a performing arts school, so it was a little bit more accepted, but it was still pretty homophobic, I think. And those kids were I don't know. I didn't want to be like them, you know. I think it was like a social capital thing, that you would lose social capital if you were gay or whatnot.
Yeah, but you would get the lead in the play.
You would get the lead in the play. You definitely got the lead in the play for sure. I do remember you got the supporting role.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Because the leading man roles are always straight guys.
Well, because someone's got to kiss her.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. Yeah.
I didn't realize you were more like performing arts. So
no, I'm not anymore. But in my past life, I was. Yeah, I was a child performer.
So bring it back to you do this panel and you got this guy being like, "Are you living the life I had?" And you're going like, "I didn't realize that there was all this history here." Do you remember the first thing you saw out or learned or found out about like after that panel?
I do. Yeah, I do. I remember actually learning about ACT UP,
okay,
which was this extraordinary group of...
Is that in the band Played On people? No.
Sort of, yeah.
I got that.
Oh, yes, and the band Played On by Randy Schultz. Mm-hmm. That is... Randy Schultz is one of the great New York Times journalists that was really one of the pioneering journalists in reporting on AIDS during the AIDS crisis, when not many mainstream publications wanted to report on it. And I think the New York Times is pretty slow in reporting the gravity of the AIDS crisis. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I remember, really learning about just how hard these people fought for things like experimental drugs becoming available to and accessible. So I think one of the first things I had learned about was this protest that ACT UP had staged on Wall Street. At the time, there was a promising drug that was coming out in 1987 called AZT. And ACT UP ACT UP was this radical group of queer people that were basically sick and tired of the government pretty much doing nothing about the AIDS crisis. The AIDS crisis really started appearing pretty rapidly in 1981. That's the first time the New York Times wrote about it. That's the first time a lot of people really began to understand about it.
They called it gay cancer.
They did.
Have
exactly.
HIV yet. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Now, Ronald Reagan was the president of the United States from 1981, he actually didn't say the word AIDS at all until 1984. And by this time, there had been tens of thousands of deaths, AIDS deaths. And so this group of activists, they got together and they started staging some of the most dramatic, intense protests. And they were really geniuses, because what it would do is it would garner the attention of the media. They were so dramatic and so theatrical that the media couldn't help but report on them. So one of them was this protest on Wall Street, where they had sort of stormed the trading floor of Wall Street. And they basically were protesting these pharmaceutical companies charging ridiculous amounts of money for these new experimental drugs that were coming in that could be life-saving. You have to remember, at the time, if you were diagnosed with AIDS in the early 80s, it was pretty much a death sentence. And so I remember that being so extraordinary, because I learned that the outcome later on was that the pharmaceutical companies actually did lower their drug prices. And I just remember being like, one of the questions I thought was, how the fuck did these guys get into Wall Street? And how did they end up, sort of storming? Who let them in, basically?
Pre 9/11 security.
But it was still a really crazy, it was pretty high security. But I remember listening to an interview with one of the members of ACT UP that had staged that protest. And he said, you know what? What people don't understand is that there's a gay person everywhere. There's a gay person on Wall Street. There's a gay person in the White House. There's a gay person everywhere, and they would basically kind of, network with each other to sort of stage these kinds of things. And I just remember being like, wow, like I am so proud to be from this legacy of people that have done these extraordinary things. And that was just one of the sort of protests that they put on.
And then there's something today where, and this is not just like queer activism, this is activism at large with a lot of young people, but people where it's the internet activism. And something when I hear queer elders, older queer folk like talk about, like the younger queers don't know their history. And so they don't seem to have like a respect for their elders. So they'll like yell at RuPaul. And it's like,
right.
You don't understand what RuPaul did. What do you think about like modern day youth internet activism in relationship to the history of like on the boots on the ground, fists in your face activism that came before them?
Well, it's a different generation. And, I think that internet activism today, for what it's worth, it can be powerful in some ways. I think, getting at the larger question of what you were asking is sort of this divide that has always been present as it pertains to young queer people and old queer people. And the reason is because an entire generation of queer people died during the AIDS crisis. And so for so many of us, we've had no elders to sort of help us chart our lives. We have no one to sort of, turn to and ask, how do we navigate this relationship that is nothing like the one my parents have been in or the one that my straight sibling has been in? How do we navigate coming out to our families that are super conservative and may reject us or may not reject us? Things that are so, like, how do you sort of learn to become financially independent very quickly so that in the case that your family doesn't accept you, you don't have to rely on them for that kind of support in any way? These are things that queer people have to think about that unfortunately we typically don't get the guidance from elders on. So I think that, some of that discourse and resentment comes from the fact that we don't know a lot of our queer history because it hasn't really been passed down to us. And that's really what this show is about. It's a queer history show, but it's actually about passing down wisdom from one generation to the next.
All right. You got plenty of like people in their queer folks in their 40s and 50s and whatnot, but there's not as many like hunched over with a cane, like aged folks to go up to and be like, let me tell you about 72, right? Like you don't
exactly. Yeah.
And then also you have it's half the country like trying to take any book that references shit out of the library so they can't learn about it.
Well, and I think that's what's so amazing and important about the internet is that, there is so much access to all of these amazing things that happened in history that, I think there's so many book bans going on now across America and in counties and libraries and on a very local level.
Yeah.
But I think the amazing thing about this young generation is that they still have access to amazing information on YouTube and through podcasts and through articles in ways that, and ebooks in ways that, I never did. So, in a lot of ways, I respect the younger generation. I think that I don't always understand sometimes their criticisms of elders. Sometimes I feel a little bit differently, but in the same token, I do respect the fact that they have a different set of political priorities and a different sense of urgency that, I and even you probably didn't feel when we were growing up, because I just think things weren't as maybe politically targeted for us as it is for them.
Sure. Do you find being someone who's kind of cuspy aged, like
Zillennial?
Is that the word?
I think that's the word. I mean, I might get the Gen Z might think I'm old for a second.
I don't know. I feel like you're of the age where like you don't understand some of the things, but you know how to do that floss dance really well.
I personally would never be caught dead doing that. I think I'm a little bit too old for that, but my cousin, who is definitely a Gen Zer, she, absolutely thinks we're in the same generation, but I was born, I think 2 years before the cutoff.
Yeah.
Cause I was born in 95, but there are some things where I'm like, girl, yeah, I'm not Gen Z. I'm not a flosser.
Yeah. And do you think like some of that like understanding of like the elders comes from the fact that you've done your research and like the others kind of maybe haven't?
Well, I was really lucky I think one of the most amazing parts about growing up, first generation American as coming from an Indian family is that, the Indian culture does have a really special reverence for elders. Mm-hmm. And I always had the most amazing relationship with my grandmother, my Nana, who passed away a couple years ago now, but we were like such a dynamic duo, mischievous, sort of like team against my parents. And I loved sitting down and listening to my grandmother's stories. And I think from a really early age, it was always instilled in me that the things that older people have to say are really important and should be listened to. I also, from the time I was a little kid, I was always a fucking history dork.
Okay.
I don't know
Roman
why.
Empire, apparently we're supposed to be into that.
Yeah, apparently we're supposed to be into that. I think
Couldn't be me.
I wish I had some Roman Empire joke to insert right there, but that's my millennial coming out. I think a lot of gay people tend to love history in English. Okay. I think maybe a stereotype, but I remember when I was in the 3rd grade, my brother was, I think in 8th grade or something like that. And he was taking a U.S. history class, and he brought home his textbook and he left it on the couch. And at the back of the textbook was all the presidents in order. And I memorized all the presidents.
I do, me too.
You too?
Oh yeah. Well, I did it through Sporcle, but 2019.
What is Sporcle?
Sporcle's just a website with a bunch of quizzes. So just
okay.
One of the quizzes like U.S. presidents in order, and then in the reverse order, and yeah. So I don't know. I dork out on that too.
It really
Fillmore Pierce Buchanan. It's just like over and over in your head. Just that's all those guys no one cares about. That's the order. Okay.
No, it really was so funny because I went up to my mom randomly. I think she was watching TV or something. I was like, "Oh, Mom, like I can recite all the presidents." And I think she was like, "What?" And I did, and she was like, "Wait, what?" And she like looked at the book, and my parents were so amazing. They had told me, "Well, look, if you're serious, put together like a little presentation for us, and if you do a really good job, we will take you to Philadelphia and show you like the sort of Independence Hall and all that stuff." This was a couple weeks after I had showed her that I knew all the presidents. And so I put together this little PowerPoint presentation on our Windows, I think 2000 computer or something at home. And we went to Philadelphia, and I remember going to Independence Hall, and I probably was like 7 years old. I was in the 3rd grade. And we had gone on a tour, and some of the patrons were asking the park ranger, what is a particular question about Independence Hall? And he was like, "I don't actually know that, but I'll get back to you." And I would answer the questions for them as like this little annoying 7-year-old in the back who wouldn't shut the hell up. But so yeah, I guess this show kind of like combines a bunch of different things for me. I think my love of history, my reverence for elders and what the wisdom that they have, as well as, this amazing sort of personal journey that I've been on to kind of reclaim this history.
Okay, so then besides Buchanan, who's the gayest president?
Well, apparently Abraham Lincoln had some sort of bisexual proclivities. At some point, I believe there are letters that he wrote that apparently, insinuate or imply that he potentially had a bisexual lover at some point. Mm-hmm. I don't know, but
my mom would say I wasn't in the bed or under it, but we got some letters.
Well, I'll tell you this. Gay people have been a part of every single part of history from the beginning of time. There's even some really excellent historians that there are some amazing historians that have pointed out that one of George Washington's right-hand men during the Revolutionary War was discharged for being gay, I believe, in the
buggery they called it.
I think so, yeah.
That was when two guys got caught boning. It's sodomy or buggery.
Well, I think they maybe turned a blind eye. I'm not sure if he was discharged, but he was in the Transcontinental Army.
Heavy on the trans. Okay, sorry. Sorry, I was right there. Yeah, no, it's people, and that's what that book, the book I was showing you, When Brooklyn Was Queer, Hugh Ryan, everybody, go to mybookshop.org, go get it. It's full of that. It's more saying, I think like a lot of these conservatives act like gay people showed up like 50 years ago. Like someone threw a rock at Stonewall, so like 10 years before that, that's when y'all started being gay. It's like, nah, it's been around forever. Just different cultures, they could say it, and others that not, and they didn't have I was telling you how like sometimes they had the language for it, sometimes they didn't, and their language was different. Sometimes you called a man fey, and that's what it was.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, he's so fey. I think that maybe. I'm going to guess was like a 1920s.
For people who can't see Billy, he just flicked his wrist.
Did a little broken wrist there. Thank you. I appreciate the voiceover on that. Yeah, I mean, you should do voiceover. That voice, dude, you have this calm, measure.
Oh my God, thank you. I
That's
feel
the
like
closest to fucking emotion I got. You were like, oh my God. I was like, there it was.
I've always been insecure about it because I feel like people think that maybe I'm disinterested or I'm bored or something, but no, it's just I was born this way.
No.
In more than one way.
Right. No, well, pre turning the mics on, I picked up, it's not disinterest. Like you lean forward, you do all the body language of interest, but your voice is very like this week on NPR. It's like you said you were too gay for finance. I was like, this is what too gay for finance is? What he wore a pink shirt? What's going on? I don't get it.
No, you didn't see my my YouTube history.
Okay.
Yeah, when I was in college.
Gotcha. Well, I was trying to imagine like what's this dude like when he parties? I
love a vodka soda. That's pretty gay though. Vodka soda.
Is it?
Well, it's like I think it's like the most low calorie drink. So
okay. Well, I was listening to that the episode I told you I was listening to, and like in the intro of it, you were talking about like I'm ready. Oh no, you were doing a Brooke Linen commercial, and you were like, I'm ready to go out partying and drinking some Cosmos. And
I do love a Cosmo. That is probably the one of the most gay things about me. A Cosmo. I feel like Carrie Bradshaw. I'm living my Carrie Bradshaw fantasy when I have those.
What's like the least gay things about you think?
Geez. I guess.
Golly Willikers. Threw out a G's in there.
I don't know. At this point, I'm like, I feel pretty confident about, the things that I like to do that are super gay. And I love, speaking of RuPaul, I love Drag Race.
Okay.
I think I maybe shed a tear every single time.
We've had Bianca Del Rio on here.
Really?
Oh yeah.
You're kidding.
Not at all.
Okay, now I'm like now my emotion voice is up and down. I'm gagged by that as the girls say.
Yeah, she did an hour of conversation in 40 minutes. I asked a question, I could just put this down. I don't need to just go.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That is really cool. No, I
Although
love.
I meant Roy versus Bianca. The guys. I think it's Roy.
Her out of drag.
Yeah, out of drag.
Yeah.
So like that's who showed up to where I was recording. Like I didn't get like Bianca. I didn't get the clown.
That would be pretty intense to come here in full drag in the heat of the summer.
Yeah. So like and gay or not, whatever. But what do you like to what do you like to go do with with the boyfriend? You got a year under your belt. Like what kind of going out do y'all do?
Well, we really love actually just kind of chilling at home. Okay. I think like one of the best parts of being in a relationship is you can kind of veg out and not sort of do the whole go out and party all night long. And so we love watching movies and watching Drag Race, going to concerts together and stuff. So
See DeSantis, they're just like us. They're like a good movie.
I don't know if he's into Drag Race.
No,
he might be secretly.
Secretly, gotta love that.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about Drag Race is like, it really is a phenomenal show that I would argue is for everyone. Yeah. It encompasses, this. I think for them it's so interesting. I was thinking about this the other day. We have such high expectations for drag queens. Like they have to be funny. They have to be beautiful. They have to be talented. They have to lip sync well. They have to know all the words to these songs that on Drag Race is like every week you have to learn a new song. Yeah. Their costumes have to be ornate and beautiful. Their wigs have to be good. Their makeup has to be good. It's insane. And, for a lot of these drag queens that go on the show, it's like the stakes are so high because for them, it's like, this is their dream.
Yeah.
And it's emotional, like following someone who is chasing their dreams. And I don't know. I think for me, how much more American can you get than sort of watching people try to chase their dreams?
Well, that's why we love America's Got Talent and American Idol and I mean, that's why that genre even like took off was like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, you do the backstory and all that. I mean, when I watch the reruns of the Sing Off, I always skip that part because like the acapella, it's enough for me. That's all I need. Just give me the whip and poofs again, please. Thank you. I don't care. I don't care about the story. Just give me good choreography. Again, couldn't be me. I'm not a reality guy, but except for the Sing Off, that's my one reality show. It's my one like reality competition show. I fucking can't get enough.
I haven't seen that one before.
They did 3 seasons an embarrassingly long time ago. But if you look correctly on YouTube, you can find Nick Lachey hosted it. And it was just acapella.
Is it? Oh, it's the
groups.
acapella one. Yeah,
that's where Pentatonics came from. You know Pentatonics,
of course.
So they won season 2 or 3. That's where they came from. And they have some of the best fucking videos from that show. So yeah,
I love that. Wow.
I had a chick here once where I was like, I told her about this and she seemed vaguely interested, and she's like, "You want to show me a video?" I'm like, "I can't show you a video. I can show you a lot of videos." And I think we did like 45 minutes of me like just showing like my favorite fucking Sing Off videos. And I'm like, cool, you still want to fuck me? What's going on? It's when you said it's sweet to just like have someone to stay in with. But was it always so chilled out, or did y'all like do like the big grand romantic gestures, the dates, the like involved, the go axe throwing?
We did do miniature golf.
You did miniature golf,
which I think is in that same category.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that one thing I was really sort of, I think both of us were pretty intentional about was we really wanted to date before we kind of jumped into anything.
Okay.
I think in my previous relationships, I kind of didn't spend a whole lot of time dating. We sort of just moved really quickly.
Okay.
But with this, we did the miniature golf. We, I think, tried to go axe throwing, but the timing didn't work out. But
I did take her to that. That was one thing that we did.
It sounds fun.
It's I don't know about the other spots, but it just feels a little insecurely set up.
Ooh,
I definitely was like, I love this concept. I would love if it was more enclosed, like a batting cage.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to get, because like in theory, someone goes to
they are real axes,
real axes, and like you're kind of all it's like lanes,
right?
But it's not closed. So like if I walk behind someone else's thing to grab my drink from this, I just felt very not safe. Axe throwing's fun. So, but yeah, like having those like fun date ideas. But did you have a lot of relationships before? It sounds like they were kind of quick, flamey.
I did not know. I think, part of being a gay man, you're not always set up to be successful in a relationship. One of the episodes that we do on the show, we actually, I interview this man who, we did an episode on the history of cruising.
Okay.
Have you heard of cruising?
I'm aware.
Okay, yes.
Yeah. Swinger culture also uses the term cruising.
Got it. Okay, cool. So yeah. Cruising very...
Dark Rooms was more of a revelation to me. That was one where I had to be like, oh, okay.
Well, all of that is really part of the history of gay people in America. Yep. And before our culture was like a lot more open, that was really how gay people would meet each other, was through cruising and through sex and through
intense eye contact passing on the street. No, that because y'all had to be real clandestine about that shit. That's why the West Side, the piers were like big hookup spots. Anywhere where it was like kind of dark, just light enough where maybe the cops weren't, around. That's where you had to.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think in the gay community, you sometimes, I guess, when you're younger, I mean, I can't speak for all gay people, but certainly a lot of us, I think early on, it's scary to really sort of get into a relationship, because when you get into a relationship, you have to be vulnerable in order for it to be successful. And for a lot of us, we spend, really our entire lives up until the point that we come out hiding one of the biggest parts of ourselves, who we love. And so I think for me, it was a big journey to learning how to be vulnerable, learning how to put my guard down, learning how to love as a gay man. It's really different from I think the love that maybe my parents share with each other, or my grandparents, or something like that. And part of the beauty of this show is to help young queer people understand that there is hope, and there is amazing love that is awaiting us, and love that is that we're deserving of, that's out there, and connecting young people with older queer people that can really teach us how to love with the wisdom they've attained from all of the failures they had.
And just like quick data points, is the boyfriend is older, younger, same?
My boyfriend is older than me. Yeah, he's like 8 years older than me.
Okay. And then had he been out, like, did he come out like a similar age that you did, or did he just
he actually came out I think probably in early college. I came out
so y'all but y'all both were college age. Okay, so it's not like y'all, like, someone did went to 30 before they could be themselves.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Well, because I was curious, like, if you see shame show up in, or did see shame show up in the relationship, like how one's personal shame shows up within a relationship.
Well, certainly in my previous relationships, absolutely. I mean, I can actually speak for how my own shame had showed up in previous relationships. I remember my first relationship that I ever had. I was so insecure, my God. And I think that, in that relationship, I remember sort of almost tying my self-worth to the fact that I had, well, let me back up a little bit. Okay. So I am a journalist that has a pretty unique sort of beat. What I report on is a little bit different from what most journalists report on, which is maybe like finance, or the economy, or politics, or something like that. My beat is around shame, and anyone and everyone that is impacted by shame in any way. As you can imagine, we're all ashamed of something. Shame in my reporting, I would define as basically the feeling that you are, the self-belief that you are unlovable. That's pretty much how I would simply define the word shame. And that can be caused for a number of reasons. I think for me, some of my earliest messages around people who were gay were that you would never be loved by society, by your parents, by the world around you. And so, when I got in my first relationship, I think that I felt almost really lucky that I had found someone who had loved me. I felt like maybe I had beat the system in a way, and I had to do everything I could to keep that, even if it meant betraying myself. And so, I had really bad boundaries. I'd lost my sense of individuality. I had forgotten about my hobbies. I stopped hanging out with my friends who were really important to me. All because I was so obsessed with sort of maintaining this relationship. But in the subsequent years, in my reporting as a journalist on shame has actually really helped me heal a lot as well, because I've learned so much. I think it's really set me up for success in finding love that feels sustainable and lasting.
And you feel like you've learned some lessons from those prior relationships to carry into this one?
Oh, 1000%. I did an episode on my podcast on shaming about failure. and the shame of failure, and how as a society we place so much shame on the idea of falling down or error or messing up, and it prevents us from actually failing at all, and two, learning from our failures. And so, for me, I think failure is really important, honestly. Even when I look at my past relationships, even though they failed, I think I've been able to learn things in terms of what I can do better. And what I really liked about what I did in some ways, and kind of bring that to the next thing. And so, yeah, I absolutely have been able to learn from previous relationships.
That's killer. Well, congratulations on a year of that, and congratulations on the new show. Do you have like an extra 10 minutes?
Yeah.
Okay. I have asked the guest channel in our Discord server, the Champagne Room. Patreon members, y'all can recommend questions, and if it's a great question, I wish it was mine. If it's a bad question, wasn't my fucking idea. So I'm gonna ask that for the bonus episode. But for now, Jordan, where can people go to find you, follow you, and check out your new podcast with iHeartMedia, But We Loved?
Absolutely. Well, which
is not an Edgar Allan Poe reference.
It's a Jordan reference. But yeah, basically, But We Loved is available everywhere that you listen to podcasts. So wherever you're listening to the Man Whore podcast, you can listen to But We Loved by just typing in But We Loved, and it'll show up. It's just a picture of my face in a red background.
Okay.
So Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. We're also on TikTok and on Instagram at But We Loved. And one of my favorite things is when listeners send in letters. And so I've been sort of asking people, send in your love story, send in your story of courage or perseverance to butweloved@gmail.com.
Amazing. Well, Patreon people, you're going to hear some more of me and Jordan in tomorrow. But for now, dude, thanks so much for coming over, and congrats on everything. And why don't you go ahead and say goodbye to everybody?
Well, thank you so much for having me, Billy. It's been amazing, and I really admire so much of your work is around the unshaming of your community, and I think it's really admirable. So thank you, everyone, for listening. This is Jordan Gonsalves on the Man Whore podcast.
Wait. There's more. There's actually more content with Jordan Gonsalves. Can you believe it? Stay tuned. I'm going to play a little bit more in just a moment. The best place to discuss this week's show is in the episode discussion channel in the Champagne Room. I mentioned the Champagne Room in the intro. That is our super free, super fun, super friendly, sex positive Discord server. Come say hello, introduce yourselves today at manwhorepod.com/Discord, or click the link in the schnotes. You can always hit me up via email with your comments, your questions, your criticisms, your stories at manwhorepod@gmail.com. The next, I gotta put down, whoa, that's too hot. Movie night is next Thursday, June 20th. I have not picked a movie just yet, but that's going to be at 9:15 p.m. Eastern time in the Champagne Room. For that, you got to be a Patreon member. It's just $3. Did I tell you it was my birthday last week? $3. And you can join us for Hot Movie Night in the Champagne Room. And at the $5 tier, you are going to get access to Jordan's bonus episode coming out exclusively over there tomorrow. And that one, we talk a lot more about what he's learned from all of his conversations with these queer elders and the themes that he has noticed, and how this younger generation and older generation can come together and keep doing something. So that's over on the Patreon at patreon.com/manwhorepodcast. Stay tuned for a clip of Jordan's bonus episodes, a little taste of that. And then, everybody, enjoy your weekends. Quit being pride cops. Search my backpack. Just search it. And stay slutty.
And he talks about battling the SWAT team in his crop top. And he talks about how the SWAT team had come in and, you know, they thought they were going to put this out in 2 minutes because it was a bunch of queers that, you know, they were in charge of sort of quieting. And all the gay people got in a line and they did this Rockette kick line. I mean, it was amazing. And he says the kick line's like, "We are the village girls. We wear our hair in curls with our dungarees by our Nelly knees." I don't, it's kind of like, I guess, 1969-ish.
Also, I wonder like how well they were able to get everyone to shout that in unison that didn't like bleed over each other. It's a lot of like, you know, multisyllabic words, not really great for chants, but admirable lyricism.
Oh yeah, for sure. You know, gay people are great at chants. One of the
but imagine trying to get 50 people to yell dungarees, hitting it at each beat. It's tough.
Well, also the kick, because the kick had to be in unison too. Yeah.